So the stuff looks great. Like I was able to pick up all the Titans Return stuff.
Okay.
And I'm loving what you guys are doing with it. So what's it like for you going back to some of the G1 designs and kind of playing with those and making them more modern and changing them around?
Well, the Titans Return line really takes place in an interesting time in the Transformers toy collecting history. It's like it's those 1988 Transformers or 1987. There's a unique color palette, and I think that it's actually really amazing to be able to take these characters that for a very long time have been sort of not really touched on in the Transformers franchise and really bring them to life in a different way. It's cool when you finally actually see them all in the case and all the colors are all kind of syncing together. You really realize that there was really something magical happening there in the late 80s, and when you have the ability to bring it to life in a new way, like with the play system of Titans Return, you can really kind of add a different kind of energy to it. We had lots of kids actually here yesterday that were just enthralled by a lot of these designs, and I think like when you look at somebody like Skull Smasher or Skull Cruncher, he's got just a great kind of universally cool design. I think everybody thinks that a crocodile that turns into a robot is amazing, regardless of your age.
So how do you guys look at balancing the movie stuff? Because I know you guys have movies coming soon.
Right.
So how is that going to balance out with the focus has been on the older characters a lot more now? So how's that going to impact it going forward over the next couple of years?
Well, that's a good question. I think we've seen Generations really grow. With the start of Combiner Wars, it's really we've really captured the imagination of not just fans and collectors, but I think a whole new generation of kid collectors that appreciate the sophisticated play of Generations. So it's growing not just in the fan community of adults, but also the fan community of kids, and we think this is a really exciting thing. For that reason, we don't see Generations going away anytime soon. We're going to run it alongside of movie product, as well as let it live its own wonderful life as something that has dimension and stories in and of itself.
Just a couple questions, like on redesigning, like Blaster and Megatron. Those are, Galvatron. You've done those. Those guys have been in Generations in the past.
That's right.
So, what was it that finally turned the corner to make them so classic versus modding them to kind of fit in with whatever aesthetics you guys were going for in the past? Because I've had all the blasters going through, and I finally feel like I've got the greatest blaster.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So how did that kind of come along, where you're like, okay, now it's time to really just go for it, because cassettes are out.
Well, I think it all kind of, if you go back in Generations, back to the Thrilling 30, it's a design mentality where we want to take the core essence of the character and really focus on what made it cool in the first place, and then just advance that. A lot of times we will reinvent a character or a combiner by adding a limb or something like that to make it a little fresh and different. But when it comes to Titans Return product, we've really been focusing on the source material and really trying to start with that and then advancing it in a way that kind of, I think, pays tribute to a lot of the great pieces of the character. We felt in the design studio that a character like Blaster needs to turn into some sort of an audio device. A character like Galvatron has to have those aesthetic pieces, like the cannon, the orange cannon element. But we did want to try to advance them to the next level by giving them that extra mode, by giving them the Titan Master ability, because that way they're all kind of synergized within the world of play. I think we've gotten a lot of compliments from fans that we're able to kind of keep a lot of those core attributes, what made them cool in the first place. But the play system of Titans Return is just so much fun, mixing and matching heads and building out your cities, tiny little Transformers. It's really, really fun.
Design-wise, you guys took Galvatron in a little bit of a different direction. So kind of looking at him with the mask instead of having it part of his head, so there's really limited mobility up top.
Right.
And moving the cannon from under to above and kind of limiting the mobility there. As a design and looking at that, where does that come into play, where we're looking at the aesthetics and saying, okay, this looks really cool as a posed figure versus a lot more action to it, because I think Blaster has a lot of action, Blur has a lot of action, Wheelie does, but Galvatron feels a little more aesthetically stuck.
Yeah, he's got because of the fact that Galvatron's trying to remedy the fact that he's a triple changer. He's got a little sort of a true triple changer. I know Blaster is a triple changer, but there is some complexity that you have to kind of work around, and our partners at Takara Tomy actually have done a pretty good job of trying to make all of the modes cool. You know, the new spaceship mode is pretty cool. And as a consequence of that, you end up having to move some of the transformation pieces around. The other thing that Takara brought to the table that I thought was really cool was that all the Voyager class guys have sort of this like head-on reveal moment. So you'll get like, you know, you can press the chest plate and weapons and stuff will pop up on the shoulders or whatever. In the case of Galvatron, when you're ready to do that final head-on moment, the faceplate actually flips up, and that was something that the designers of Takara Tomy were super passionate about. And that's one of the awesome things about working with the designers there, is that we kind of fuel off each other's passion. So if a designer over there is like, no, I really, really like this idea of this faceplate flipping up, like, all right, that's cool. It's good to figure out a way to get that articulation, and we'll go a little bit back and forth about like, all right, well, let's keep it, but we need to increase the amount of articulation. So, and it ends up being a better product because everybody's passionate about it.
That's great. I was just curious about those choices. Now,
it's a good question.
It was one of the things when I opened it up, I was like, Blaster's amazing. I'm like, oh, I can't turn his head, and I'm like, so I kind of want to know where they came from.
Blaster's head turning does have a pretty good range of motion.
Yeah, it does. I think that's a really good one. You guys have done a great job kind of grabbing all the movie characters, especially that box set is amazing with RC and Blur and everybody. Is there anybody from that era that you think really hasn't gotten the update since you guys have been moving along from Generations 1 way back, I don't know, almost 10 years ago?
Right.
To now? Are there any that you're thinking of that? I'm not asking you like what's coming, but like on your short list of saying like this one needs an update. It hasn't had the update or doesn't have the aesthetics that we want it to.
Within Titan's Return, as you know, because you're a big fan of this era too, it sounds like there were a lot of small Transformers, whether there be Power Masters, Target Masters, and that whole era. So a lot of those types of characters are on our short list right out of the bat because they intrinsically come with a small Transformer. Hot Rod notably being one that I think we'd be excited to bring to the table in a new light, as well as the original Decepticon Target Masters. We think that there's an opportunity to do those guys in a really cool way. In addition to those guys, I think the triple changers, the original triple changers, would be great to see again in a cool way, especially since we have Astro Train out there. I think you need some friends.
You brought up Hot Rod or Rodimus.
That's right.
He was my favorite as a kid. So is it done being the Rodimus Prime versus Hot Rod? Is he just going to be Rodimus going forward, or is there something like in the ether of there is a chance for something where he is the leader class versus or a leader versus the smaller kind of Hot Rod character?
Well, you have to stay tuned on that.
Okay.
But definitely the character Hot Rod and the name Hot Rod we have back, which is really cool.
Okay.
So you'll see in our 1986 commemorative product we have over there, we do have the name Hot Rod, which is exciting. And so moving forward, we want to make sure that the small guy's called Hot Rod, and if we did a big guy, we'll call him Rodimus.
That's great.
I think there's value to that. Fans of this era of Transformers, really, it's very polarizing. I grew up in the part of the 80s where G1, I loved Optimus Prime. I was heartbroken when he died, and then you've got a group of people who just absolutely love Rodimus Prime. We found over the years that a lot of these fans are in China and Asia, and he's like Rodimus Prime is so popular over there. It's crazy. So in his character, if you look at the Japanese saga, actually has like kind of a different, more seriousness to it.
Right.
It's a little different. I mean, he's cool in the 86 movie. But I think that to do that character right, you got to pay tribute to the fact that he's got like his trailer and he upgrades and all of that. So I think that's something that we want to make sure we do right eventually.
One more question. You guys did an amazing Megatron for the Combiners back.
Right.
That was in that really big, huge scale. Like.
Okay.
we haven't really seen an Optimus in the classic look that's kind of really that matches that size. I always have an Optimus and a Megatron that are kind of like playing sizes.
Right.
And I think going back to the first wave of classics where you had that Megatron gun version, almost nerf version, and the Optimus, those seem to be compatible.
Yeah,
but we
they
haven't
totally
seen
do.
one where they kind of play off each other. It's like they're kind of going back and forth. Are you guys looking at trying to do that, or are you guys going to keep them kind of going back and forth, kind of playing off of that?
No, I think you'll have to stay tuned. I
Okay.
think it's definitely something we want to embrace, is having a Optimus and Megatron. We understand how important that conflict is, and how cool it would be to have two characters that are the same size. So
Yeah.
I guess you'll have to stay tuned.
Okay. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Khalil.
Thank you.